Um, Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this next webinar, this next one in our series of top tips. This morning, as you can see on the screen, we're talking about understanding your donors. And in effect, we're really talking about how you can understand your donors in order to generate the sort of insights you need to help with the effectiveness of your fundraising campaigns or communications. So we're going to be talking more about that in the next 20 minutes. So in the next 20 minutes, I'm John Eversley, MD at WPNC, and I am saying very little this morning. I'm sort of introducing our guest speaker. I say our guest speaker, but guest speaker being Claire Daniels, our Fundraising Strategy Director. I'm sure many of you will have seen her in meetings or in on previous webinars. So good morning to you, Claire. Claire, it is over to you in a second. Let me just say a couple of things on housekeeping. It's about 20 minutes, the presentation, and we very happy to receive questions. Please put them in the chat. We know it's working because we've seen some of your chats already this morning. Put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A bit, and hopefully we'll come back at the end of the 20 minutes when we'll have a few minutes for questions. I'm sure there'll be some burning questions or discussion points coming. And probably that's all I need to say right now. Sit back, enjoy, and engage with Claire. Claire, over to you.
Amazing. Thanks very much, John. Lovely to have you all with us this morning. And as John said, we're here to talk about understanding your donors, and specifically understanding your donors in order to get better communications, marketing, fundraising, comms out to them. I think what's really important for me to say is that no matter what you're doing, it's always really better to know who your donors might be. And anyone who's heard me speak before will know that this is one of my favorite topics to talk about in terms of consumer insight. There can never be too much understanding of who people are, but also there can never be too little. Even just knowing one little thing about what motivates people to want to support your charity or to not want to support your charity is going to help you in terms of building your communications, building your fundraising campaigns, building new products, etc., etc. Specifically for kind of the creative process, if you like, and I use that terminology very broadly. This could be everything from planning your next appeal to planning a little bit of digital marketing that you're doing, to planning a huge, big, campaign, integrated campaign, whatever it might be. But by understanding who the people are that are most likely to donate, and then understanding what their needs and motivations are, what makes them tick, what's going to make them get really emotionally invested in your cause, and what some of the barriers might be to them supporting or to taking the action that you want them to take, is going to help you essentially just create better stuff, right? So you'll get better targeting. You're going to be able to make things that feel more relevant to those people. They're much more likely to respond to it if it feels relevant to them. You're going to be able to tell more compelling stories, because actually this isn't about just going, okay, do my consumers prefer pink or blue? They prefer pink, so I'll make everything pink. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about co-creation with consumers, and I think it really helps, and we find this all of the time, it really helps in pushing your own thinking into braver, more innovative spaces when you have the confidence of the conversations you have with those consumers. And of course, it reduces risk. Now, we can't 100% say, oh, this is going to be successful because, these consumers liked it. But we can do everything we can to base our insight in as much kind of in close to human kind of real behavior as we can. And I'll explain some of that later in terms of execution. And understanding that consumer is going to really help to validate those decisions you're making and reducing uncertainty. It stops becoming about whether you like it or not, and it starts becoming about whether this creative, this messaging, this communication is going to land best with your audience or not. And that's a really important distinction. So when we talk about insight, I think, it can mean lots of things to lots of different people. And insight projects can be, huge, big pieces that are going to help you shift your service offering through to small little checks of a digital marketing campaign and everything in between. Specifically when it comes to kind of creative development or kind of any comms development or any idea generation, creating a new product, that kind of thing. I think there are kind of three key bits of the puzzle and 3 times that you might use insight. And the reason to break it up into these 3 chunks is just that you might require different types of insight at different times in that journey. And it's about making sure that you pick the right thing from your toolkit to use at the right place. So we'll start off with foundational insight. This is all about just really understanding who your audience are. A good place to start with foundational insight actually is, what do you already know? You might already have quite a lot of this sort of thing. You might have a supporter segmentation, you might have historical data, there might be internal knowledge from people who speak to supporters on a day-to-day basis. But you're looking to understand what their needs and motivations are, what gets them excited, and what are the barriers to support. So if you bear with me with my analogy, imagine you were you were opening up a cafe next door to a gym. So you think, well, my main customers are going to be the people going in and out of this gym. And so I want to understand a little bit about them. So in terms of their foundational insight, you're just going to try and understand a little bit about, when do they visit the gym? When are the peak times? What are the sorts of things that what are their needs from a cafe? What are the jobs to be done when they enter your door? And you might discover that they're really into kind of healthy wellness, healthy eating, and they particularly like protein. And you might discover this in the foundational insight phase. So then you're going to move on to having some ideas around that. So we've worked out, or we know we need to have healthy, offering dishes, things that are going to help support their training at the gym. And we know that protein is important. And at the creative insight, we might have some ideas, right? So we decide, okay, well, we might do salmon, we might do chicken, we might do avocado, we might do eggs on toast, we might do oatmeal. There are all these different things that we might offer on our menu. That's a kind of job, whether that's an ideation session you have internally, whether that's working with a creative agency, you're going to have these ideas, right? And then you can do creative insight. So that's when you've got something and you want to take it then to the consumers and say, what do you think? We've created this and we've created this and we've created this. Which of these do you think is most appealing to you? And at that stage, you're looking to really understand, what do they need most? Which messages or which imagery pushes the specific buttons that you need, and how might you drive the desired behavior? And that can be really co-creative actually at that stage. And that's where you'll often find things that really push your thinking. So in terms of my gym cafe, well, I know they need protein. We've had loads of ideas about the protein sources that we might offer on our menu. And we do this creative insight and we find that these gym lovers, most of them are actually vegetarian and they really love eggs and they really, really like eggs. So then we decide to take that forward as our thought for the cafe. Well, what happens if we just served eggs, loads of eggs? And so then you come back to the table with your creative team or internally, and then you're going to say, right, well, we know that eggs are the things that's going to sell best. That's what's going to get people to buy. But what kind of eggs? Do we want scrambled eggs, fried eggs, poached eggs, omelets? How might we serve those eggs in order to best appeal? And that's where you get to your execution. So you've got a specific idea, and then you need to work out, are there very specific words or images or executions that drive the strongest results? Is there a particular statistic that's going to perform better than another? Is there a particular type of imagery that's going to perform better than another? Do we need to diversify by audience? Maybe the morning gym goers really like scrambled eggs, but the evening gym goers really like omelets, right? So it's all about working out at that execution stage how we're then going to roll out this creative approach. And that's where your testing becomes very kind of specific, very based in real behavior. And we'll talk about specific tools in a bit, but it's where we might bring in, digital testing, smokescreen testing, things where we're really trialing out little tiny tweaks to a particular execution. So that's a kind of suite of how we might use those. And I'm going to take each one in turn and just talk to you a little bit about what you might do at each stage, what kinds of tools you might use, and how it might be helpful. Oh, it's not letting me click. 1 second. There we go. So let's start with foundational insight. So at this stage, it's all about asking good questions. It's about learning about the people that you're talking to or that you're observing. You don't necessarily have to go out and talk to them. It's about being really broad. So I don't know, you might think that your audience are really, you might be a homelessness charity, and you might think that your audience are really motivated by street homelessness, and that might actually turn out to be true. But at this stage, it would be amiss of you not to broaden that a little bit further and to try to understand their motivations and their needs and their thoughts and their perspectives around other types of homelessness, even around other causes at this stage. You know, leave people a nice open environment to answer your questions and give them space. But also listen to what they don't say. You know, this is all about trying to understand who these people are and what makes them tick. So the kinds of tools that we can use in this space, I really like qualitative interviews. I like one-to-one depth interviews. I'm not afraid to say I absolutely hate focus groups because I think you get a lot of groupthink in those scenarios. And if you really want to get to know who your audience are, just go and have a conversation with them, you know, and make it a conversation. Don't make it a formal interview. You know, use techniques to get them to open up and to be honest with you and to talk about who they are as a person and what makes them tick. One of my favorite opening questions to ask people is not like, what do you do with your time or what are your hobbies? But, you know, what keeps you lying awake at night? What's the thing that worries you about your children's future? You know, they're big, deep questions, but they help you really get to how this person sees the world. And that's really important for then understanding how you might advertise something to them. There's other things other than qual interviews that you can do. However, I would really recommend social listening. Go and see what people are saying about your particular cause or about your product or about your campaign. Search Facebook. Facebook groups can be fascinating. You know, if you know that, I don't know, parents of under fives are a core target audience for you, go and join some mum and baby groups on Facebook and listen, just watch. Just listen, just see what people have to say. It can be really fascinating. And sometimes as well, you can even, you know, make connections. Obviously, it's important to do ethical research. So you shouldn't be directly quoting or directly replicating anything that you're seeing there and putting it into a research study. But I have had success before reaching out to the admin or the moderator of the group and asking, you know, would you mind if we put a post asking people to take part in a survey or that kind of thing? Sometimes people are open to that, and that can be really interesting and helpful as well. And surveys do have a place. I think at this stage of foundational insight, quantitative stuff has to be taken with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because you can't really get that depth of understanding why people are saying what they're saying. However, if you've got the time to analyze it, having a survey with lots of free text boxes can do something along those lines. Another great thing, we'll talk about specific tools later, but there's lots of tools out there where you might get vox pops, that kind of thing from people, get people to answer specific questions in a more qualitative way, but using digital tools, using digital online, not having to sit down and actually talk to people. So you'll get this foundational insight, and you might, you know, you'll understand a lot more about who people are as a person, what makes them really tick, what sort of thing you need to say or do in order to get them to take the behavior that you want. But you might have a few different options. You might not be 100% clear on how you might take that forward. So then you're going to have some ideas. Oh, sorry, the case study. An example of this that we've worked with. We worked with Mind on their Everlasting Forest project. So just to give an example of the foundational insight that we did for this project, even though Mind came to us and said, we want a digital in-memory project, in-memory product. So we knew pretty much what they wanted from the beginning. We still took a step back and we went and interviewed people broadly about in-memory giving, full stop. We didn't just talk about digital. We understood all of the types of in-memory giving people did. And we also spoke to people who hadn't ever given in memory as well, to understand what had stopped those people giving. What could we offer that might encourage them to do something in the future? So at the foundational insight stage, we really took it nice and broad, nice and wide, to understand much more generally about the lay of the land for people in this space or not in this space. And then we were able to move forward with specific insights from that in order to create the most successful product. So the second stage is around creative insight. So you might have ideas. So in the Everlasting Forest example, I think we had maybe 3 or 4 different ideas on the table for what this product could be, how it might work, what it might look like, that kind of thing. And then you want to know, well, which one of these can we take forward? How can we have confidence in taking one of these ideas forward? So at this stage, we're looking for qualitative interviews, again, asking people, but also A/B surveys. And I say A/B really importantly, because I think it's about showing people one thing and asking them what they think in a survey, not showing them two and asking them to choose, because that's not real behavior. That wouldn't happen in real behavior. When you're doing qualitative interviews or when you're doing surveys and asking for free text, I think what you're really looking for is emotion at this stage. How it doesn't really matter whether someone likes the color or the font or the image you've used. What matters is which of these propositions, which of these ideas makes them go, oh, yes, that's exciting, or I haven't seen that before, or cry or feel upset or move. You know, where's the emotion? And also ask them to help make it a co-creative exercise. Say to people, we're trying to develop a new in-memory product, for example, and we've got these ideas, and you know, which what would you do? What would make you tick? What would you do better? Because sometimes you'd be really surprised with what people have to say. So a good example of that is we're currently working with the Salvation Army on some legacy proposition work, and we're really excited because we've done our foundational insight. We know that you know, trust and longevity and all of these beliefs and values that are at the heart of why people support the Salvation Army, and that's been fantastic. We've seen really consistent answers from people in that. And now we're about to work with an agency to do a survey, and we do things. We have a tool called Response Insight that we can use at this stage, and we work with partners such as FastMap, and we're doing now a big quantitative piece to understand which of 4 different territories might be the right area for us to move forward to in our proposition. And one of the tips at this stage is to ask the question in lots of different ways. So if you're not able to look for the emotion because you're not doing qual, but you're maybe doing a survey, as we are in this case, we're not just going to say which ones you like and then take their answer. We're going to ask them in lots and lots of different ways what they like, why they like it, how they might like it, what it might make them think, what it might make them do, what feelings do they get as a result of that. And then we're going to look for the patterns across those answers in order to understand which one we might take forward. And then finally, you've got your idea, but you know, there's so many different ways to cut that. There's lots of different ways to break eggs, right? So which way are you going to put that to market? What are you going to take forward? And this is where you really start to get into variant testing, and smokescreen testing might be something we've spoken about as well. So the one thing I would say at this stage when you're doing any kind of testing, and I say it because I see it all the time not happen correctly, is make it a fair test. Only change one variable at a time. So if you want to know which image performs, leave the copy exactly the same in every other version that you've got, and just change the image. Or if you want to know which headline performs best, leave the image exactly the same and leave the body copy the same, but change the headline to test that, right? It's really important. The other thing is to ground things as much as you can in real behavior. So obviously, smokescreen testing is brilliant because you're on Facebook, for example, and you're serving ads and you're asking people to click something. It's much, much closer to real behavior than in a survey. But you can create this in a survey, and you might ask people, how likely would you be to respond to this advert? And then you might say, and how much would you donate if you responded to this advert? And again, only show people one thing, because that's more like real life, and ask it in lots of ways. I'll give you an example. We were very lucky to work with Marie Curie on their Great Daffodil Appeal this year. At one point, we ran a survey using YouGov's self-service platform, which I'll talk about again in a second. I think at one point we had a survey with about 36 different variations. So only showing each advert to a very small pool of people, you know, it doesn't have to cost a fortune. I think each one was seen by 100 people. And just changing something different each time. So we did 3 types of testing. We did image testing, we did the headline testing, and we were testing like a stat like this every 5 minutes version versus a more emotional copy. And then we did some body copy testing. And that testing led to this combination that you see on the screen right now. You know, the best performing images were the images like this. The best performing line and stat was this stat, and the best performing copy was the narrative that led to this TV ad. And you know, what was really brilliant about this is that you can then take those learnings, really narrow it down. And we had a couple of variants go into then digital testing, and we built on those learnings, and we can continue to see the same results in real life as well. So that was fantastic. So just a couple of thoughts. It doesn't have to be really expensive to do loads of insight. I mean, obviously you can work with agencies like ourselves, but also you can just go out and ask questions, you know, your friends. Take something that you're doing. You're writing an email to send to your supporter base tomorrow. You've looked at it a million times. You're really close to your cause and therefore possibly a little bit blinded as to what's reality or not. Phone your mum up. Ask her to look at it, you know, ask a friend, see what they think, get a different perspective. I think you'll find it incredibly valuable. As I already said, Facebook groups are a really fantastic source of insight and information. Have a look at those. Reddit is brilliant for understanding kind of all the different perspectives in the world and what real people think. It doesn't always work, depends what you're looking for. But if you haven't Googled search your charity on Reddit and had a look at what people say, go and do it. It's really interesting. There are tools like SurveyMonkey, which is fantastic at building surveys if you want to send them directly to your own database. You can also buy data on SurveyMonkey, but I personally prefer YouGov Self-Serve, which is a fantastic tool for being able to serve your own surveys. And VoxPopMe is the tool I mentioned earlier, where that's fantastic because you can get short, snappy videos from people to see what they think. So 3 things to take away from this very quick brush through of quite a lot of information. There are 3 types of insight in the creative process. Realize where you are in the process and what kind of insight you need at different stages. Be prepared to make changes. Don't go into something thinking you're just checking, oh, is this good or is it not good? Be open to the fact that you might significantly change it as a result of the insight, and that's okay. See it as part of the process. And it doesn't always have to be complicated or expensive. I've talked about lots of different things that you might use here. More than happy to talk further or answer questions on that. But there are lots of tools you can use yourself, and there are lots of people that you can get to help you in terms of understanding things. Ooh, there we go. Over to you, John.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire. That was, dare I say, excellent. No, thank you very much. Thank you for that. That was really a rush through. Now, if you all found that, well, I hope you found that as interesting as me. And if you would like to know more and talk a bit more about that, then let me make you aware of our 30-minute advice. It's a promotion that we've been running to go inside with the webinars and with other marketing activity we're running. So we're inviting people to just, you know, get in touch with us at WPNC, and we'll put, so if you want to discuss any of the topics around, I don't know, legacy, TV, digital, you name it, it could be to do with the insights as this morning with Claire. If I can direct you to our webpage, or simply enough, click on our QR code here, that will take you to the advice page, and you just fill in the form, and one of us will come back to you, or probably me actually, I'll probably come back to you with a little more, and we'll schedule a meeting, but just 30 minutes, and we'll be really happy to see how we might be able to help. So that's the plug for the 30-minute service. Another plug coming up now, which is for next week, and Claire, so I'm back here again, same time, same channel next week to talk about TV, and I'll be joined by Maria Phillips, our head of TV and film, and we'll be talking about TV best practice, really, DRTV best practice, particularly in fundraising. And I know we've given similar talks in the past, but this is an up-to-date version, and I think you'll find it quite interesting, particularly against the current climate and the challenges and stresses with budgets and cost effectiveness. So we'll be talking a bit more about that next week. So thank you again to Claire. And this is the time for questions. I know we've had a couple of questions come through. First one, Claire, is an interesting one, but you may have touched on this when we talked about foundation, and I think this came up just before you did that. But anyway, here's the question. So what's the best stroke, most effective way to find out what our audience needs are?
I would say talk to them. I mean, it depends a little bit on who your audience is, anonymous attendee. Do feel free, if you want to chat about it further, reach out, we can have a 30-minute chat about your specific audience. But yeah, it does depend who your audience are. But if your audience are, you know, some kind of member of the public that could be found in the UK, then speak to them. Honestly, it's the most useful thing you can do to understand what people tick, and just ask them broad, open questions, you know, really trying to understand who they are as people, and don't just ask them about their charity giving, because people aren't walking around day to day thinking, oh, which charity should I give to today? You know, only us 45 people on this call think that. That isn't what everyone else is doing. So understanding the kind of broader context within which things might be sitting for them is really important. But yeah, I genuinely believe it's qualitative insights the best thing you can do.
Wonderful, thank you. Quick one from Bridget, who can't make next week. So thanks for raising this one. If you can't make next week, I urge you to please just register, and we'll be able to send you a copy of the recording. As you'll know, these sessions are recorded, and we will send all of the people who have registered, whether you've attended or couldn't make it, we'll send you a copy of the recording so you won't miss out. Excellent. So last question from anonymous attendee. When you conducted the foundational Insight on Mind, did you already have the audience demographic defined?
Yeah, good question. So for a project like that, so sometimes you might be doing a very broad piece of insight to understand who are the most likely donors and what do they like, you know. So you might literally be saying, we don't know who we should target with our next campaign, so we need to speak to people who've supported us before, people who've never supported us, and people who might support us in the future. We're going to keep it really broad, speak to lots of people, and then we're going to understand who to focus in on. So that might be one way that you might do that. Specifically for Mind, or a project like that, where there's already a clear idea. So we knew we needed a digital in-memory product. Okay, so that was the focus that we're looking at. So we needed to speak to people who had previously done something in memory for any charity, right? Because we wanted to understand what are the common experiences that are collective across those things. What are the things that people need and motivate them to do those things? We then also needed to speak to people who were potential audiences for In Memory for Mind. So you have to have some hypotheses at this point, right? But for example, for that, we thought about, well, it's people who obviously have lost somebody and are open to donating to Mind. So we recruit people to speak to in that space as well. Obviously, you might already have some kind of segmentation or something which might narrow you even further. So, for example, when we worked with Marie Curie, they already knew the kind of really core target for who are their right target audience. But I always look to stretch that a little bit around the edges as well, because you never know who you might find in terms of how you might motivate them outside of that. Hopefully that answers that question.
And we're heading towards the 10 o'clock where some people are jumping off, but there's probably one question that I think that tends to come up with a lot of conversations as I talk to clients about consumer research, and it's this one, Claire, so I'm going to put you on the spot. And it's a question that goes along the lines of, can you really rely on consumer research, and how much can you take of what they say as genuine attitudes?
You have to assume that everybody's lying to you at all times. So I think, you know, the worst consumer research is research where you listen to what one person says and then you repeat that back as fact. That's not what it's about. I think what it's about is understanding sometimes what people don't say, understanding how people emotionally react to some of the questions that you ask, understanding some of the broader feelings that they have. You've really got to dig deep and dig underneath that. And there are some really strong things that you need to do if you're doing qualitative research, for example, in terms of active listening, that will really help you with that. It's a very famous quote, isn't there, from, I think it's Henry Ford, who said, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. And that's absolutely true. That is what people say. But that's, it's not to say that you shouldn't ask them, because what's interesting is if people would have said faster horses, we would have said, okay, the bit that's important there is they want to go faster, right? So it's not that we need to go out and make faster horses, but how can we give them the same experience as faster horses? Why are they saying that? They're saying that because they want to get places quicker. So how can we help them get places quicker? How might we do that? And then you have your creative ideas off the back of that. So it's not about taking what people say literally. It's about looking for the commonalities, looking for the shared experience, and looking for the shared needs and motivations that people have, and then taking that and working out what you're going to do next.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you very much, Claire. We've gone past 10. I can see people are going off to their 10 o'clock meeting. So I think it's time to say good morning. Thank you very much. See you next Wednesday, 9:30. Thanks again, Claire, and thank all you guys for tuning in and watching and spending some time with us this morning. Take care. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.